Officially heard it all. People are saying, I think Oscar De La Hoya and Canelo Alvarez camp are saying that Jermall Charlo and the other top fighters are ducking Canelo Alvarez. That's right. That Jermall Charlo is ducking Canelo Alvarez and the other top fighters are ducking Canelo Alvarez. That he's the money man, but nobody wants to fight him. Wow. Let's talk about that in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel. So Canelo Alvarez, Jermall Charlo, a fight that should have happened years ago at 154 pounds that did not happen at 154 pounds. A fight that should have happened at 160 pounds when Jermall Charlo was the mandatory for Canelo Alvarez, but it did not happen. Canelo Alvarez signed a contract with DAZN for, I believe, $1 million for every day of the year, if I recall correctly. Something like $365 million contract. It was supposed to be the biggest contract ever signed in sports for him to fight on DAZN. Pretty much paying him a pay-per-view rate of money for every fight that he has on DAZN. It was the first big signing of DAZN, first big signing and still the biggest signing that DAZN has had to push their fledgling sports app to American fight fans. Now, you would swear that with $365 million, that you would be getting, that people would be jumping to fight Canelo Alvarez because DAZN should also be paying the other guy that fights him, right? But according to Canelo Alvarez's promoter, Oscar De La Hoya, that is not the case. That the best fighters are trying to avoid him. He mentioned specifically Jermall Charlo avoiding him, which is, my friend, foolishness. It's just absolutely positively unbelievable. But let's look at the facts and see if there's anything that would make somebody believe that that was the case. Okay. First, Jermall Charlo was at 154 pounds with Canelo Alvarez. Canelo Alvarez left 154 pounds to go to 160. Jermall Charlo moved up behind him to try to get a fight with him at 160. So the fight didn't happen at 154. Was it Jermall Charlo? Did Jermall Charlo try to go up in weight first and leave the weight class, or did Canelo leave the weight class? I do believe it was Canelo that left that weight class first, but that's not proof that Canelo ducked Jermall Charlo, but it definitely doesn't lean anybody to believe that it was Jermall Charlo that wasn't trying to make the fight there, seeing as Canelo moved up without fighting him and Jermall Charlo stayed where he was. But then Jermall Charlo moves up to 160. What happens when Jermall Charlo is at 160 pounds? He becomes the WBC mandatory for Canelo Alvarez, who was the WBC champion with a belt that he won off of Gennady Golovkin. So Canelo Alvarez is at 160 pounds. He's the WBC 160 pound champion. Jermall Charlo fights for the WBC and becomes his mandatory. So right there, you would think that the fight was going to take place, right? Wrong. Through an incredible convenience. What is not convenience? Coincidence. That's the word I'm looking for. Amazing coincidence. The WBC just so happens to institute to create a new belt. And it's called the franchise belt. And it's for the franchise champion. And what is a franchise champion? A franchise champion is the WBC champion that does not have to fight mandatories, right? So the WBC moves Canelo Alvarez out of the WBC championship position into the franchise position, which means he has no more mandatories. Jermall Charlo moves up to the WBC championship, right? He has mandatories. So Canelo, still WBC champion, is no longer mandated to fight Jermall Charlo. Jermall Charlo didn't leave the WBC rankings and go to the WBO rankings. He didn't try to find a way. He didn't move to skip 154 and go to 168 to avoid Canelo. He was the mandatory for Canelo, but Canelo voluntarily relinquished himself of the responsibility to fight Jermall Charlo. So I'm not quite sure. I don't think that either the move from 154 to 160 or the move that Canelo Alvarez made by becoming franchise champion and alleviating the necessity to fight Jermall Charlo, neither one of those are indicative of Jermall Charlo ducking Canelo Alvarez, but might very well be argued that it could be the opposite way around and Canelo Alvarez that's not trying to fight Jermall Charlo. But then let's look at the idea that Canelo Alvarez is being ducked by the rest of the champions in the weight divisions that he fought in. He held a belt at 175 pounds. There are other champions at 175 pounds. One, that is the light heavyweight division. There was Demetrius Bivol, and there was also Arthur Beterbiev. Both of them are still 175-pound champions. Canelo Alvarez is no longer a 175-pound champion because he dropped the WBO belt that he won off Sergey Kovalev. Now, who would you think was the person that was avoiding the smoke at 175? Would it be the guys that stay there or the guy that left? I lean towards the guy that left. That would be Canelo Alvarez. Now, at 168 pounds, Canelo Alvarez fought for a championship at 168 pounds. What belt did he fight for? The WBA regular title. He didn't try to fight Callum Smith, who was the WBA super champion. He decided he was going to fight Rocky Fielding for a secondary belt. I can't recall who the champions were at that moment, but I believe it was Andre Durrell. If that fight had taken, I do believe that the fight between Anthony Durrell and David Benavidez had not happened yet. So I believe it was Anthony Durrell that he could have fought. Maybe Benavidez, depending on the timing of it, he could have fought. I'm pretty sure Caleb Plant had already beaten Uskatagi, so Caleb Plant was there. I'm not sure if Billy Joe Saunders was up at 168 pounds yet, but there was Billy Joe Saunders. But he chose not to fight any of the guys with the major championship belts. He decided to fight a guy with a secondary belt who he could stop with one punch. Rocky Fielding. Doesn't seem like those guys were ducking him. It seems like maybe he decided to being Canelo, tried to take the easy path on 168 pounds as well. But see, when you phrase it like he's at 160 and he's at 168 and he's at 175, it sounds as if, man, this dude is winning championships in multiple divisions. But if you look closely enough, and you see the champions that are in those divisions, with the exception of 160 pounds, he chose to fight the weakest links at the two weight classes above. Not to totally diminish the accomplishment though, because hey, that is a big weight span. And these are professional fighters that know what they're doing. So, it ain't easy, but it was definitely, I think it's safe to say that if he had decided that he was going to fight, that he was going to unify 160 pounds with a fight with Demetrius Andrade, when he had all three belts, Canelo had all three belts, and Demetrius Andrade had one, that would have unified 160 pounds, and that wouldn't have been any conversation about any of this. There wouldn't be any conversation. He would have been an undisputed champion at 160, but he chose not to fight Demetrius Andrade for that, or DAZN chose not to let him. I think more than likely it was DAZN who was trying to get him to fight Gennady Golovkin, right? But 160 pounds would have been locked up. He chose not to do that. Moves to 160. He moves to 168 fight, doesn't fight so you get what I'm trying to say. The idea that Canelo Alvarez is being avoided by fighters is just nothing about how the fights themselves played out would you lead you to believe that. Now, could there be some issues related to it? Related to like the offers that are being made by DAZN? Because hey, man, when one guy's getting paid $35 million, the other guy expects to get a lot of money too, because it's a big fight. But if you offer guys, I don't know, $1.5 million, for a Canelo Alvarez fight, when they can get, like Jermall Charlo, if you come up with an offer that's too low for Jermall Charlo, but Jermall Charlo can make something close to that fighting somebody else, maybe he would not take the fight with Canelo just because he's being insulted. And he's like, hold on, man, this dude's getting 35 million and you want to pay me this? No. Pay me the going rate, similar to what people were Anthony Joshua with his DAZN contracts was having people ask for more and more money because the money's out there on the table. And, Canelo can't fight by himself. Maybe that has something to do with it. But dude, I am not buying at all that Jermall Charlo is ducking Canelo Alvarez or anybody else is ducking Canelo Alvarez, because Canelo Alvarez is the biggest fight that any of these guys can get, that we're talking about, for the most money that these guys can get. And losing to Canelo Alvarez is not something that is going to finish your career. Beating Canelo Alvarez is something that could really make it. I doubt very much. I think the highest likelihood is that Canelo's team and DAZN are being very strategic about who they want him to fight so he can make it through that $365 million contract to the end. And then maybe if they leave DAZN and they go back to regular pay-per-view, then it's time to start fighting those guys, because you actually have to attract fans to get your money. That's my thought on the matter. You let me know what you think. And with that, I'm out. Peace.